Hello, everyone, and welcome to another electrifying, actifying, hectifying, and goddamn rectifying episode of Depression Vacation Podcast.
Bzz, that was the electric.
Yeah.
Haha. Yep. It is us again here in the flesh-ish.
Yeah.
Kind of. I guess, you know what's kind of weird? What's weird is that we record this and then people listen to it later and it's like they're traveling in time back to when we talked.
Yeah.
Isn't that pretty cool?
It is.
Look at that.
I think we mentioned this on the podcast before, but in accordance with, like, the episode of Black Mirror I saw where they reconstructed Haley Atwell's dead husband using all video recordings he had made of himself. I was like, if either of us died and that technology exists, which I think it does probably exist somewhere,
Oh, sure.
there could be a very lifelike bot of Hal and Shannon continuing to do this podcast. Ooh, that's an idea. I mean, I haven't toyed around with AI very much at all because I kind of hate the idea of it.
Yeah.
Maybe we should attempt to get an AI-generated episode of Depression Vacation Podcast.
That would be hilarious, actually.
Yeah.
We make the AI listen to every episode and then tell it to write an episode.
Yeah, it would be funny even just to get like a one-page synopsis of it, sort of like have you seen the bot-generated obituary ever?
I want to say no, but it also sounds great because I've
read it out.
AI, like I've read some things where it's like, oh, making it listen to like every country song and then have it write a country song. Not every country song, but like, you know what I mean? Like listen to Johnny Cash and then write a Johnny Cash song.
Yeah, well, one of the funniest things, did you hear about the never-ending Seinfeld episode?
No.
Oh my God. So there was they had AI running using pretty crude like computer animation, a never-ending Seinfeld episode just based on watching every episode of Seinfeld. And part of the charm of Seinfeld was things didn't always have to make sense. And so like when the AI bot would get things really wrong, it still fit the world of Seinfeld. And it went on for like continuously 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for like months before they had to pull it for a different reason. Because in like the AI's job was to learn and hear what was going on in the world. And one of the things the AI Seinfeld did, it started making really bad transgressive trans jokes. And so they pulled it. The one, like, it didn't. So saw the episode or part of it where they got pulled. And I don't think that it was getting to like that joke in particular wasn't necessarily horrible, but it was showing a troubling trend of what had been a pretty inoffensive show since then.
Gotcha.
Or before then. I don't know if it ever came back.
Huh. Wow. You know, I never really got into Seinfeld much.
Me neither.
I grew up without like cable and stuff, so.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, it would have been, I guess, in cable repeats when you were growing up.
I mean, I did watch a lot of Friends, which was, it was one of those things that had repeats playing all the time. But my dad and my stepmom, they had DVDs of Friends of like every episode for every season. So, and for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I watched all of those the way through.
This is the second Buffy the Vampire Slayer reference I've heard today. So,
what was the first one?
I was having breakfast with Sam actually this morning.
Oh, cool.
And Sam used to host these like when I first was like new back in town in Pennsylvania, like within the first year, and met her like through, I can't remember where I met her, either through the Improv Theater or film because we liked both of them. But she used to host these pretty like small like Buffy parties where it would just be like 5 or 6 of us sitting around watching Buffy the Vampire episodes.
Oh, nice.
So, Buffy the Vampire Slayer episodes.
I find that's a show that I can pretty much drop into any episode and have a nice time. Pretty much.
Yeah. My sisters and I were really, really into it the first 2 seasons. It was on the air because it was like the WB like biggest block on television. Mm-hmm. I believe both of them still were super into it till the end, although my interest in it faded. But Buffy was a very good show. It was
that show did one of the greatest musical episodes.
I've heard this, and I've never seen it.
It still holds up. It really does. And fucking James Marsters
that's his name,
James
Spike.
Marsters. Yeah, I mean he does fantastic in it. Well, and then Anthony Stewart Head. Well, I mean he was in a band, and he was also in Repo the Genetic Opera. But I don't know. I can't think of when that came out in relation to Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
It's so interesting because like I love the lifelines of actors, especially working actors like Anthony Head, who've had like a couple of scattered famous roles throughout their career. And like the long distance between two of those roles, like, do you watch Ted Lasso at all?
Mm-mm.
Anthony Head is the villain, like the super villain on Ted Lasso. He's the ex-husband of the owner of AFC Richmond, who is basically the devil incarnate.
I honestly didn't realize he was still working.
Oh, yeah. In fact, they even brought him, he's not on the In-Betweeners TV show, but he plays Will's dad in the first scene of the In-Betweeners movie. And it was mostly like as sort of a favor because his daughter, Emily, was the main love interest on the entire show of the In-Betweeners and then also the first movie. And then she didn't appear in the second movie. But
wow.
And that was so cool, like, because I never put together that Emily Head and Anthony Head would be... Because they don't really necessarily look alike at all. But it was kind of cool. It's like, oh, that's Anthony Head's daughter. It's Carly.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, he's if there was... Ted Lasso is a very feel-good show, and they try not to have, like, uber villains. And even Anthony Head has, like, one or two tender moments on the show. But if there was a villain on Ted Lasso, it absolutely would be him.
Huh. Wow. I mean, he was also... Okay, so I only saw, like, the first 3 episodes of Merlin before I got bored. But it's such a beloved show, so I feel bad for, not really getting into it. But he was King whatever,
Uther?
Uther Pendragon or whatever. Yeah. And so he was kind of a villain in that.
Yeah, there's a lot of... Like, in Arthurian legend, Uther... does...
Not a cool dude?
I don't remember exactly. I think that, like, I know Arthur was sent away and, like, it was sort of a Moses situation.
Oh, okay.
No, you see, I'm getting them confused. So it's Modred is, like, the bad guy in Arthur, and Modred is, depending on which version of the Arthurian legend you're looking at, is Arthur's son.
Oh.
And even bonus points for incest. The reason Modred is even conceived is because like Arthur being sort of Mosesed away and not knowing who his family was, Uther Pendragon had a couple of daughters in addition to Arthur, and one of them he encounters like early in his kinghood or knighthood or whatever, and again, depending on the version, he's enchanted into having sex with his sister, and Modred is the result of that. Or it might be half sister. I mean, there's some sisterhood involved.
Yeah. And you know what? When I was a kid, I was super into like Arthurian legend, but as I've gotten older, I've recognized that I wasn't like as into it as I thought because like there's a whole lot of versions out there that I wasn't like aware of and stuff like that. So it makes me feel like I didn't do my due diligence as a 12-year-old.
It's really interesting because like since Wikipedia has become a thing, I have been very interested in looking up like what the historical antecedents are to things like Arthur or Robin Hood or things like that. And the Arthurian legend, if I remember correctly from my last stroll down Wikipedia, is incredibly convoluted and muddled. Yeah. There's a lot of debate as to whether or not there's any historical precedent whatsoever because Arthur is probably an amalgamation of like 8 or 9 different dudes.
Right. What's really... so this is getting me kind of nostalgic. When I was a kid, I used to go to the library a lot, like on the weekends.
They still got those things.
Yeah, they do. It's wild. And I used to like walk all across town just to get to the library on the weekend, which now, as an adult, I was like, wow, that was a kid who had nothing better to do.
There wasn't as much to do back then.
No, I guess not. Well, I had no friends, so that was kind of a thing. But it's okay because I would go to the library and I would just spend hours at the library, and then I would bring home like hours worth of books to read for the week while I was in school. And so I used to have like this rotation of books that I would check out, and a lot of them had to do with like myth and folk tale and like ghost stories and like cultural folklore and that kind of thing. And that was like my jam when I was a kid.
Yeah, I used to go to like, I want to say, did not go to the library very much when I was in undergrad, but like around grad school and around, I want to say like my first couple post-grad years, I used to go to all the libraries because it was the like only place I could get work done because they didn't have Wi-Fi readily available at these places at that point. So that's where I could just go, be isolated, and just like sit around for 3 hours doing schoolwork or writing screenplays or something. Now Wi-Fi is everywhere and I can't work at all. But
Yeah. Well, like for me, when I was in undergrad, when I basically had to kind of rotate between different places, because if I sat in one place for too long, I'd start to not be productive.
yeah, I get that.
So like in the library, I'd start off on the first floor, and then after an hour or two, I'd move to the second floor, and then after an hour or two, I'd move to the third floor. And then at that point, if I still had work to do, maybe I'd go to the student center or the cafeteria, or so like I basically just roamed all around for working, because I really just couldn't stay in one place for too long.
Yeah, I get that. So my parents sit on I think they still are on the board for the Klein Branch Library, like on 29th Street in Harrisburg. And they were saying that like that was like the charity or civic engagement that they decided to be involved with, especially they said like at a certain point, it's not so much about books anymore with libraries, but it was like the only point of internet access for a lot of people in the city and like the surrounding areas who couldn't afford internet in their home. And the world fucking tried doing the internet trying doing the world without the internet at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's why I think libraries are so important now, is that, you know, as things get pretty crazy with the economy, you know, sometimes some people, the library is their only way to get to the internet to like. And also, I've also found that like as I've been a manager, a lot of people I've talked to on the phone, I'll send them a form or something that they need to fill out, and then they'll be like, okay, I'm going to have to go to the library to print this. Yeah. Because they don't have a printer, which, I mean, makes a lot of sense for sure.
Yeah, the world is so digital at this point. Like, yeah, there's nothing profound about that statement.
It is. We're just being grumpy about it.
Yeah, get off my www dot, because nobody does that anymore.
Oh yeah, I remember when you had to type that in.
Did you ever actually have to type that in, or did it just make things look cooler? Like, I know like .com isn't necessarily the end all be all, because there's like gov, edu, net. But like, is there anything besides the www, and is that why we've stopped using it? Because it's just ingrained in everything?
So I think that, I don't know. I don't know much about computers, and somebody can correct me, and I'm sure my dad would correct me on this one.
Come on, Brian.
But I think that back in the day, you had to type in www dot, but then as time went on with the internet, they recognized that that was redundant because there was no other options. So then it got to the point where you didn't have to do that anymore.
You know, you're probably right, because I would assume like the World Wide Web was probably not the ubiquitous use for the internet, because it started off as just like Usenet, like message groups and things like that. In fact, when I was watching the Kids in the Hall documentary, they talked about how like Usenet message boards were like the major way for a lot of them to communicate with each other, like and be fans and be friends and all that. So yeah, the internet used to be very, very basic, but with much less hate on it. So
that's true,
because the hateful people were too busy being hateful to learn how to use a Usenet group.
I don't know. My formative years were playing pinball on the computer.
Was it the exact same pinball that everybody had on Windows 95?
Oh, yeah.
What was it, Cosmic or Space Pinball?
I think it was Cosmic, I want to say.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I also, my gosh, I just remember all of the different like PC games that were for learning that I had as a kid. And then remember when we all had a computer room?
Yeah, you mean at school?
No, I mean like literally in your house. Like there was a room designated for using the computer.
Yeah, we had that. It's now my sister Christy's room, but that was our first computer room up there. And it was mostly because I think they tried out the computer in our like den room, which is where it sits today and where my dad goes on the computer. But like we were lucky enough that we had a computer from like maybe 89 or 90. With a word processor and like could play educational games and a few other things. But those like, and I'm not talking like the 3.5-inch floppies, but like the giant 9-inch floppies are what we used. And those tended to smell after a while. Like they burned because the disk drive was moving so fast and couldn't like keep up. So there was like a weird smell associated with playing those like giant floppy disks. So we moved it to what was essentially the office room at that time.
Huh. That must have been before my time. Those big old floppies.
Yeah. Well, even the 3.5 floppies are like dead now? Like, when was the last time you saw anybody use a floppy?
Never. And actually, so, we're talking about like things that we're grumpy about now. Like the save button is still a floppy disk.
I know.
And these kids are out here like, I don't know what the fuck that is, but okay.
Yeah, there's so many. That's one of the big things I talk about with symbols that kids don't quite understand anymore. A phone is one of them, too.
I was just talking about that with somebody else, like that they just put their hand to their ear now, I guess.
Yeah.
Instead of making the banana phone.
Well, that's a weird thing with improv is with improv, object work is supposed to like represent you actually using the object. So like a banana phone is like a mortal sin in improv with object work. Like you're just supposed to pretend you're holding something, not like your hand becomes the phone, like banana phone.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, like, and so like today we were having lunch with Ryan's family, and so we were playing with the nephew, and he's like not even a year old. He's like gonna be 9 months old here soon. And so like he does the put the hand to the side of your face when you're talking to somebody. Yeah, I know. I'm like talking to the back of the computer.
Yeah, I was like, it wasn't this high last time. Now I can see your eyes.
Right, but like we're like hippos looking at each other across the pond. Do they live in ponds?
Sure.
No.
Hippos are water creatures.
Yeah, but like aren't ponds like, okay, when does a pond become a lake?
Let's ask.
I didn't take my ADHD medication today.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know how big it has to be, but I certainly don't.
All right, here we go. Sorry about that disturbance. Hal had to take a call.
I was disturbed.
Yeah. So we were talking about hippopotami, I think.
Hippopotamuses. Hippopotamus.
I'm the hippopotamus. My rhymes are truly bottomless.
Did they hear my didn't take my meds song?
Probably not.
Aw, dang it. But yeah, so I just don't think hippos would fit in a pond. And I don't know at what point a pond becomes a lake.
Yeah, I don't know either. I was picking up my phone
to look it up, and then you saw the text message. Yep,
yeah,
see, there we go. See, that's how it happens.
Yeah, that's
how it happens.
That's how it happens. Making notes.
I saw a hippo at the Philly Zoo when we were there, but we did not see your sister.
No.
There was some false advertising on your part. But,
no, Christy, did you go there in the middle of the week?
We went on a Wednesday.
You might have seen Christy there. You've never met her, so you wouldn't know what she looks like.
No, I guess that's true. Yeah, because and also, to be honest, we weren't like actively looking for her anyway, because we were like, red pandas, otters, so
yeah, the red pandas
just having a good time.
Red pandas and otters are good. I used to go down there a lot with my ex and her kids because they loved, specifically hippos were a huge thing.
Well, yeah,
they loved.
They're just, I don't know, they're delightful. Have you ever seen a hippo eat a watermelon?
No.
You should look it up. It's the best thing.
I will.
It's adorable, but also you remember that hippos are like really dangerous creatures.
Oh my God, they're like it's something like hippos are per number of people killed every year. They are the most dangerous creatures on the planet, and it's by a wide margin or something like.
I believe it.
Like everybody thinks sharks because of Jaws, and sharks are super fucking scary, and hippos are just the subject of a beloved children's game.
Oh.
But like, hippos are killing machines. Like.
Oh yeah, they're fast as fuck, dude.
Yeah, in fact, they what is it? Because these are all Final Fantasy creatures too. Another historical / mythical thing that I am obsessed over is what am I trying to think of? Are like mythical creatures.
Oh yeah.
And one of them, like Behemoth, for instance, is meant to be a hippopotamus. I forget what Leviathan is supposed to be. They think maybe a giant sea snake, but
see, anytime you say Leviathan, I think of the Lost City or the Disney Atlantis movie. Is it called the Lost City of Atlantis?
Atlantis. I haven't seen that actually. So
you haven't seen that? That is a masterpiece.
I've been told.
And also, there was this thing. I saw this thing on TikTok, and it was like bisexual women are attracted to women and men that look like Milo Thatch. So it's accurate because Ryan does a little bit look like Milo Thatch.
Yeah.
So, interesting movie I watched last night for the first time, and I've totally missed the hype on it. Like there was a whole thing about it. Don't Worry, Darling.
Oh, yeah. I don't really have that much interest in seeing it, but it was like the most dramatic behind the scenes story.
Yeah, well,
ever.
I guess there was all this drama with Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles, which I forgot that they dated, and like then Chris Pine and all that. But I watched it last night, and I gave it like a solid like 3.5, 4 out of 5. You know,
Yeah.
I thought the ending could have been better, and there were Olivia Wilde directed it.
Yes, I'm very, very aware.
Yes. So some of the shots, now I don't know if this is just because I was watching it on what is now called Max instead of HBO Max.
It'll always be HBO to me.
But like and there were shots where like you saw half of their face or their chin was cut off. It was really weird. So I don't know if that was intentional or if that was just the streaming service I was watching it on. So if anyone knows the answer to that, please let me know, because I was very off-put by that.
This feels like a Sean thing. Like Sean listens from afar, person I haven't seen in 10 years, but still friend, and will occasionally chime in. He came up with the response to one of our like childhood queries, didn't he? Yeah.
Yes, he wasn't it the silly songs thing?
Maybe. I don't remember.
But the lady who was finding all the colors, it's fine. I didn't dream that. It was real. I'm just glad it was real, because sometimes like I have this memory that I'm not sure if it was a dream or not, where I'm like, I was in the top bunk of the bunk beds my brother and I had growing up, and I'm like looking up at the ceiling, and there was only like a 2 to 3 foot clearance from the bed to the ceiling, and like all these spiders came out of the ceiling. So I'm really hoping that was a dream. But it's possible it wasn't.
Yeah. Hopefully it was a dream.
I hope so.
I mean, you survived anyway, so I guess it doesn't necessarily matter.
Well, yeah, but it would make me feel better if it was a dream.
Yeah. Some other mythical things I always like thinking about too, like this popped in my head when we were talking about this a few minutes ago, was after rewatching all of the Indiana Jones movies, I was looking up the history of the Holy Grail.
Oh, yeah.
And the Holy Grail is a really fascinating one too, because it doesn't really... As we think of the Holy Grail and as the public consciousness thinks of it, it wasn't really a thing until like the 16th century or something like that.
I always wonder, because we were talking about like Moses, right? And how like Arthur was like Mosesed. And it's like, I always wonder to myself, like, did Queen Victoria or like somebody who lived in medieval England, like, did they ever think about Moses? Like, did they?
Probably.
Because here's the thing.
Moses definitely existed in, like, Bible history from that age.
I don't know. I want to know how churching was before like now, because, you go to church, you learn all the stories, but I feel like, you tell the same stories over and over again. So, like, were all of these medieval people sitting around learning about Jonah and the whale just like me?
Probably. I mean, it was, like, the only book you could read, really, as a commoner, and even then, most commoners couldn't read, so you had the priest read it to you. So, like, it's very real possibility that was, like, the only book of stories a lot of people were read during their lifetime.
But they also had, like, a lot of oral storytelling at that time, too.
It was probably the majority, like, especially if we're talking, like, Gutenberg was, like late 1500s or something like that.
I don't know. I used to know stuff like that.
I still occasionally know stuff like that, which will make me a moderately mediocre Jeopardy player someday.
Well, so that's the other thing. Like today at lunch, so sometimes Ryan's grandma likes us all to play trivia games together, which is basically her reading off of a page that she printed off the internet with like trivia questions, and then we all, try to guess the answers. And so today they were all like wedding themed. And I'm not sure why we were doing it so far ahead of the wedding, but I was like, okay, well, this would have been fun to do at like the wedding shower or something. But there were like a lot of things that I didn't know about weddings. Like, did you know that men didn't wear wedding rings until World War II?
Yeah, I didn't know that, but like my dad has never worn a wedding ring in his whole life, and he's always been like, it's not something men do, for instance. And that was actually pretty common growing up. Like a lot of kids' dads in our church did not wear wedding rings.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, and now it's a bigger thing now, but it's not like, I don't know.
And then I read in an article recently about like how wearing white did not become a thing until Queen Victoria's wedding to Prince Albert. And it wasn't even to symbolize like purity or anything. It was because white was a sign of wealth, because you wouldn't catch the poor people wearing white because you couldn't keep it clean. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. White is so different from like culture to culture too. Like I wouldn't have thought about this. Oh, excuse me.
Excusing how?
Excusing how? I wouldn't have thought about this except I was going through like some of my comics last night, and I was reading some of the Silent Hill comics. And in like one of the very first ones, it's a psychiatrist taking his patient to Silent Hill to like confront her fears because she keeps seeing white all over the place. And another psychiatrist is like, I think you're misinterpreting this, because the woman comes from an Asian community. And he's like, you're seeing white in all of her dreams as a sign of purity, something that was lost from her. But in Asian culture, white symbolizes death. And so from a misunderstanding between two cultures, he literally drives his patient back into hell, and hilarity ensues.
Oh my God. I never. So was Silent Hill a game first?
Yes. Silent Hill was actually, I don't know, I've probably mentioned this before on this podcast, but it's one of my favorite game stories ever. Because like in Japanese work culture, you never get fired, basically. But what'll happen is if you suck at your job and if people don't like you,
They send you to Silent Hill?
No, they'll assign you to do nothing, basically. Which is more shameful than being fired. Like they will pay you just to sit around and like do nothing. And Silent Hill was Konami took a team of people who had failed at other projects and were in this realm, and they just created a like skunk video game for them to all work on, so they didn't get in the way of the actual developers. And the skunk video game was Silent Hill.
That's really sad.
Isn't that funny? Like they put all the people who they didn't want to bother other people on this game. And that's why Silent Hill is foggy, by the way, is because the developers were lazy and couldn't think of a way to not show more than just one rendered house at a time. So don't, and it's become only like one of the most beloved video and disturbing video game series of all time. So.
I've never played the games. I watched one of the films a long time ago.
Yeah, there's one good film with Silent Hill, and it was directed by, there was a French like surrealistic director named Christophe Gans, who was really interested in directing the Silent Hill movie and like went to lengths to do it, and actually churned out a really good inspired by Silent Hill kind of thing. Like there were elements of the game in it, but it was mostly sort of its own story.
I wonder if I watched that.
It was the one with Radha Mitchell, and I guess Sean Bean is in both of them technically, but they did a cash grab sequel like 4 years later that had Jon Snow in it, and it was pretty terrible.
That wasn't the one I saw. I saw the one with the daughter, like the little girl.
Yeah, that was the one.
The good one?
Yeah, that was the good one.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Look at me go.
Yeah, so Silent Hill was something that actually had been relegated to nothingness by Konami. Like it was just basically used for pachinko machines. And then about a year ago, out of nowhere, like this is something Glesser and I like freaked out about. They announced like they were developing like 7 new Silent Hill games and 2 new movies. Like completely, like Konami had been teasing that Silent Hill might come back for a while, and so all of us were kind of like, oh, this might be nice having another installment, and nobody was prepared for the fact that they were dropping like multiple new games and a movie. So
wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because Silent Hill actually, like, I mean, they haven't had a new installment for it since like 2009, but the last installment was pretty cool because that's when open world games were starting to become a thing. And so as much as the PS3 would allow, they made Silent Hill into an open world environment, which was really cool. Like kind of the mechanics of the game where it was called Downpour. And so, like, periodically it would start raining in the town, and when it would start raining, you would get swarmed by so many monsters that you couldn't possibly stay out and hope to live. So you'd have to duck into an empty house whenever it would rain, and every single empty house you would duck into had some sort of thing haunting it that you wouldn't be able to get out of until you solved what happened or what creature was lying in there.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was a very different kind of horror experience, and I was really into it. And then, yeah, they canceled the whole series for a while.
Rude.
Yeah.
Wow. Look at that. Cool.
I have flabbergasted Shannon.
I ran out of steam in talking.
29 minutes in and already given up. You really are tired today.
I really am tired today, but that's okay. Let's see. What else is going on? We were going to talk about wild nonsense
Oh, our podcast enemy.
Yes, not enemy. I don't know. That's a strong word. Enemy is a strong word. I think it was just like, I don't know. So here's the thing, Hal, my friend. You know it takes me 3 to 5 business days to answer a text message.
And they're usually pretty like concise too.
Yeah, like I'm just literally the worst texter in the world. And so I was very surprised one day to see that our podcast had gotten a Facebook message that I read and then immediately forgot about. And then within a day, that person...
Not even a day. We're talking 18 hours.
That person was very upset that we did not respond within 24 hours or whatever it was.
Just a heads up. If you do want to be a guest on the podcast, first off, don't send anything to the Facebook account for Depression Vacation Podcast.
I don't know shit that's going on. I don't...
Like, I don't check that account at all. And I remember I was driving into work and my watch buzzed and I got a message from you being like, hey, have you seen what's been going down on our account? I'm like, I didn't know, but I messaged that. And I was happy to find that we had been message bombed by a person who thought we were spurning them to be on the podcast, which... this person, just throwing it out there, was probably not going to be on this podcast anyway, but now definitely will not be.
Well, and here's the thing. Here is how the conversation went. It was like, let me tell you a story. So it was the person said, hey, I'd like to come on and talk about XYZ, if that's cool. And I read it and then immediately forgot about it. And then they followed up the next day with... if you're not going to respond to me, I'll just remove both of you as friends. And I was like, oh, my bad. So I messaged back and I, like any rational person, I just said, hey, sorry, we didn't respond. Things have been pretty crazy lately, which is a completely reasonable thing to say.
You were at the Renaissance Fair when this originally came in, because I remember we just had recorded an episode that day.
Yes. So I was really busy that day and I just like didn't, and that's the thing is like, I think there's a whole plethora of people out there who have a hard time texting. I see jokes about it all over the internet, unless it's just catered to me because of algorithms. But that's just how the world works. And so I said, hey, sorry, things have been busy. And then, just as I'm about to be like, Hal and I will talk about it and we'll, get back to you, this person then said, well, if I was important enough, you would have texted me back.
And you gave the greatest response in this history.
Well, that was that was when I decided, I was like, all right, if that's how we're going to be today. Because honestly, if I was in that person's shoes and somebody had said like, hey, I'm sorry I didn't text you back, I was busy, I would say something reasonable like, no problem. We all get like that sometimes.
But you see, this person had already committed to being as aggressive as possible.
I know. So
you are also not like a steaming narcissist, which I also believe this person to be.
Well, and I just said, you're right. If it was important, we would have responded.
Burn.
So, I mean, and here's the thing. Like, I don't like to be mean to people except when there's unreasonableness going on.
Yeah, I don't like to be mean to people either. It's why I don't do the roast battles at the Comedy Zone. And I'm not that funny of a comedian. But
Hal.
But in general, we don't like being mean to people.
No.
But occasionally you just run into somebody who is like a steaming ball of rhinoceros charging narcissism and meanness, and you kind of have to respond in kind occasionally.
Here's the thing, and it's also like the person involved. I haven't spoken to that person in over 6 months.
I hadn't spoken to that person in almost a year.
And so I'm not going, if I have to take anything else that's going on in my life and weigh it against someone who I haven't spoken to in 6 months, the odds are that person is not going to win.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if I sound petty or anything, but
here was the interesting thing about this, like to break it down, away from pettiness, which there's a lot of pettiness on our part here, but to put this into perspective and why this was such a toxic person in general, this person had a outdated idea of what their acquaintanceship with us was, like not even friendship, like basically was an acquaintance, and was trying to weaponize that into like attacking us over this thing. Like the first response, as you said, was like, oh, I'm going to remove both of you as friends. And that assumes that their acquaintanceship means so much to us on social media, and B, they can use it as a bargaining chip to try to hurt us when they have been perceived as being
slighted.
Yeah,
I guess.
So, which is you might recognize as being an incredibly toxic response.
That it's just not a very mature to respond to, not get a text message back and immediately just say, well, if you won't respond, we won't be friends anymore. Because, I don't think I've ever interacted this person even over social media. So I don't know. It just, y'all need to act right.
Yeah. Well, this happens to me all the time. I think it happens with you occasionally because, as you've noted, occasionally you're busy and you can't answer text messages. So if something really important if I have texted something important to somebody and they just haven't responded yet, sometimes I'll just send a message being like, hey, I'm bumping this conversation.
Yeah. Just
to remind you. And actually, I did this recently with another person who requested to be on the podcast, who I shared his message with you.
And it was very sweet.
Yeah,
and
actually,
it was very nice.
We'll say his name on the podcast because he's such a sweetheart. It's Ben. Ben Chadwell, who we both really... I think you only met him at the New Year's party, right?
Probably.
Yeah, but Ben Chadwell is a very sweet person. And this happened with him. He sent a very long, nice message to me saying, hey, I'd like to be on the podcast. This is what I could discuss. But also was very nice in being like, you don't have to put me on. I just thought that it might be a good thing. And I did respond to him, and I didn't get a response for a few days. So I had to bump the message. And I'm just like, hey, bump in this message just to get back. Did not feel slighted that he is too busy to respond to me because this is life for most of us.
Right. Well, here's the other thing about it. This just occurred to me. So, we're both stand-up comedians. Mm-hmm. And from time to time when I've seen that someone is putting together a show, or if I know that someone puts shows together, I might reach out and say, hey, I'm available for shows. If you would be interested in having me on, I'd be delighted. Let me know if you want to hear any of my, if they haven't seen me do comedy before, I might be like, let me know if you want me to send you a video or anything like that. And then I leave it at that. I don't think I would ever, for example, Sarah Cartwright, love her. She is amazing.
Still have never met her in person.
Well, so she's putting together some shows for Halloween coming up.
Nice.
And I texted her the other day and I was like, hey, I saw you have a show that you're putting together that's close by where I am. I'm available that day. I'd love to be on it if you have room for me. If she hadn't responded, I would have just let it go and never said anything about it again. But I mean, she's not the kind of person to just not message you back ever. But just I couldn't imagine myself if she didn't respond within 18 hours going and be like, all right, Sarah, you bitch.
Not even a full calendar day.
Right. I know. I just couldn't imagine myself acting like that. It's just so entitled. It's so and it just doesn't make people feel good in the end. And no one's going to walk away from that interaction feeling good about themselves.
Yeah, I think it's I've said how much this was narcissism on this person's part, but also trying to dive more into it. I believe there is a level of hurt associated with because I have never been as bad as the messages we've received there, but I have acted poorly sometimes when I've perceived I've been being left out of things. And there's apparently a primordial reflex with that. If you're left out of things, especially with your friends, it's sort of it triggers memories of when we were cavemen and you were
You remember when you were a caveman?
I do.
Oh shit!
It was 6 cycles ago, so. I've been several dogs and a lizard since then, and also one hippopotamus. Killing machine.
Oh my god.
But yeah, the idea is if you're rejected by people that you perceive to be close to you, you feel very hurt and left out because it's triggering a survival instinct that we bond together as people to survive. So.
Which is okay, but then, if you say, hey, I wasn't appreciative that you didn't message me back, that's different from being okay, well, we can't be friends now. I don't know. I feel like most people recognize that people get busy.
Yeah.
And I think that the immediate reaction was uncalled for. And
so uncalled for. That's why we're even discussing it on the podcast. Because it was hilariously an overreaction with not a lot of time either given to...
Well, because then I started typing and I was in the middle of typing hey,
I saw that too. I know what you're going to talk about.
Well, I was in the middle of typing and I was saying and then this person started spamming and was oh, so now you decide to message me back. And I think it was specifically directed at you, Hal. I think they thought you were messaging back. And I was like, this is Shannon. I want to apologize for us not getting back to you. And then I said, it's been busy. And then they hit me with that line. And I was like, all right. And they have exhausted my friendliness capacity for today. Yeah. And so I just, like I said, I will give people an opportunity to do the right thing. But and I even said to Ryan yesterday, because I was...
you gave plenty of opportunities to be nice, I think, in that situation.
Well, and I usually do. And like I was talking to Ryan yesterday, and I said, I've just decided not to waste my time accommodating people who don't give a shit about me. Mm-hmm. And so in the sense of like how that person was interacting, threatening to not want to be my friend anymore was like the least of my problems at that point. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it was very much I think I sent you the GIF from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like, yeah. Oh no, please don't go.
Please don't go.
Yeah, it's like you can't. I don't know. There are certain things that you don't bargain with whenever you're hurt with people, and like that's just a sign that you are not mature enough to have an adult friendship, in my opinion.
Right.
And like I've discussed, like, funny thing is, like the day after this, Lauren and I took a trip to Pittsburgh. And when she showed up the morning, I'm like, boy, howdy, do I have some fun stories to share with you.
I sent it to my dad. I sent the conversation to him, and he laughed. He was, I think he gets really happy when I have like a snide remark because he thinks it's genetic. So.
I can confirm that, having spoken to Brian like twice.
Yeah. My dad. He's spicy sometimes. That's where I get it from.
I did send the messages to Lauren, and she was like looking over, and she's like, clearly this person was trying to get to Hal somehow. And I was like, yeah, they should have messaged my personal account and attacked me there. So.
Right. I'm just like, well, also, that's the other thing is, like, if you have beef with somebody, don't send it to a place where multiple people will see it.
I know.
Because especially, like, I don't know.
Because you were the point of contact for all this vitriol against me.
Right. I was like, because they were just throwing all this shit out there. And I was like, listen, this isn't even directed at me. And I feel attacked. Like, Jesus Christ.
The Depression Vacation podcast is a collective. You attack one of us, you attack both of us.
Yeah, exactly. Just, act right, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's speaking of that, like, we do have some good guests coming up too in the next month or so. Like Ben, whenever we figure out a time to get him on. For all of you who do not know Ben Chadwell, and I'll give him a better introduction when he's actually on the show, but he is a very sweet, very interesting guy who does a lot of things. He's done VidJams in the past, and in fact, one of his VidJam movies, which was in the very first VidJam that not even I participated in, was one of my all-time favorite shots in a movie. He did a very interesting, like, not just genre, but like medium mixing movie about a couple who like intersect with each other over several points in their lives. And he had this one shot at the Harrisburg train station where he just happened to get like their silhouettes dancing by the stairs in the sun. Like the inside of the station's all black and it's just their silhouettes dancing. That actually reminded me a lot of a scene from Punch Drunk Love. A similar type of thing, but it still remains to this day, like, I have like maybe 10 shots for VidJam stuck in my head of various people's movies that were some of my favorite ever shots in movies, and his is one of, like, in the top 5-ish, I'd say there.
Nice.
Yeah, but also a supreme improviser and, good all-around guy.
Yeah.
Can't wait to have you on, Ben. And we're also going to have, I was just talking to her this morning about this, Sam Melville is going to be on at some point in the future, too, to talk about VidJam of Horror with us.
And it's another prop one I saw.
It's always props. Yeah, VidJam. In fact, I just finished.
I guess I just haven't done enough of them to know what the thing.
It's okay. VidJam of Horror. I actually just finished putting together the promo for it this afternoon.
Nice.
And it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be. Did you ever go to any of the VidJam of Horror screenings? Because you weren't there last year, right?
No, I wasn't there last year, and Barnaby was virtual.
No, you did go to the dentist, because I remember I couldn't stay for the dentist, and then you were our only representative. Because that was when Ryan
and I were briefly broken up. And
still both in the dentist, amazingly.
Yeah, we made it happen. We are in entirely different scenes. But I roasted him a bit about this, because I went to the screening and I was kind of sort of seeing someone in this brief hiatus that we had, and So I didn't invite that person because I was like, I know Ryan's going to be there and I just don't want to cause any awkwardness. But my dad and his then girlfriend did come. And Ryan like walked in and immediately went to the exact opposite end of the room. Like sat as far away from me as possible.
I was afraid you were going to say he walked in and walked out. So.
No. He just like, it was very awkward and cringy. But now we're getting married, so it's totally fine.
Yeah, that was a weird in-between period with you. Like, I was talking to Lauren about this movie on our way back from Pittsburgh because I was like, oh yeah, it was a weird moment where Ryan and Shannon were broken up, but we still found ways to get both of them in the movie.
Yeah.
Ryan gets his throat slashed with a toothbrush. He's the first casualty of the movie.
Right.
And then we drenched you in blood down by the pond by my house.
Yep.
Because I remember you had a date that night, too.
I did. Yep, with said person who then, I mean, we dated for a couple weeks. And like as soon as we made it like official, then like he broke up with me like the week after. He was like, nope, no thanks. And I was like, cool, this is great. But I mean, on the other hand, it did open the door for Ryan and I to get back together.
It was meant to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's weird to think about. You know, and it's so funny because I kind of have this unwritten rule of like not getting back together with exes, but I've done it twice now. And the first time didn't go well, but the second time, I'm going to call that a success.
I've never gotten back together like relationship wise with an ex. I have reconnected / rehooked up with exes, and it has never gone well ever. There was like somebody I was dating like directly before the pandemic, which this is still like one of the more depressing like breakup stories I had because like for whatever reason she was just over me at some point and she had come on very, very strong and I was like, oh, I really like this person and they're into me. And then like over the course of a month kept canceling every single time we were supposed to hang out. And I kept trying to have a conversation being like, is everything okay? This feels like this isn't okay. And she kept assuring me, like, this was almost like gaslighting to this point. Like, everything was fine. And then broke up with me for somebody else. But then that somebody else, like, dumped her in the early part of the pandemic. And she, like, you know, came, like, crying, crawling back. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think we can have this conversation right now.
We're in a pandemic.
Yeah. But, we met up. We hung out a couple of times. And then, like, as soon as I wanted to have a conversation again, she stopped talking with me. Yeah. And I'm like, well, fuck you. Yeah, fine.
I will say that the guy that I briefly dated in the hiatus really was that was probably the best breakup I've ever had. I'm not going to lie.
That's a weird thing to say, but I think I understand where you're coming from.
Well, so what happened was I kind of saw it coming, first of all. And so, like, we had plans to hang out. He took me to Chipotle, and he bought the Chipotle. So I was like, okay, this is a good sign because either he's going to break up with me, but at least I get free Chipotle. So, like, you know, we're sitting there, we're talking, and we ate our Chipotle and stuff. And then finally he was like, listen, I don't remember the reasons, not that it matters all that much, but he was basically like, you know, this is too much for me right now. Like, I can't commit to this and that kind of thing. I was like, you know, that's totally fine. I saw it, you know. And so I did cry a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. And I was just like, you know, I understand. And like, I'm not going to take it personally. But like I said, you know, it wasn't very long after that when Ryan and I got back together. So
yeah, I'm glad to hear that because I feel like you and Ryan are uniquely situated for each other. No,
that's pretty great.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of you as a collective and you as individual people as well.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, just I don't think I've ever felt so suited for another person. And like I've been working on my vows, which has been a very emotional process. And like we had dinner with his parents last weekend, and he went to the bathroom, and they were just saying like how happy they are that we're getting married, and they were like, well, and they even said, you know, they were like, we just think you two are so suited for each other. We were concerned that like Ryan would have a difficult time finding someone who just matches with him as well as you do.
Matches with his weirdness. I love it.
And so like, Yeah. I'm so pumped. I'm so thrilled.
Yeah, I remember. It's so funny because like I was even talking to Lauren about this on our trip too, like vis-a-vis the dentist and all those things. Is like I remember running to Ryan a couple of times, like or seeing him on the Zoom like open mics that we did, and my first response was like, "Wow, damn, Shannon, that's a handsome young man." And I wasn't expecting him to be as goofy as he was when I finally met him. Like, for Barnaby, he was in a mask most of the time, but his giggles were very like horrendous, and wasn't expecting that. But I think when we did the one in the woods, it's not a contest, and Ryan was like darting all over the place and being just a giant goofball. I was like, I love this person.
Filming his own movie in the whole meantime, or was that?
Is that where he was? What he was doing? Yes. I didn't know he was filming his movie like in the background.
Yeah,
there.
that's what half of what he was doing. Was
I thought you guys like shot it on Sunday.
No,
that's so funny.
We did. I mean, we shot some of it on Sunday, but the ones where he's running through the woods, that's literally while we're shooting.
I did
it's not a contest.
Know this.
Yeah.
This is so great.
Yeah. So yeah, he's great. Oh, and so the other thing I mentioned to his parents is like I haven't had like the best experience with marriage. Like I don't have a good vision of what that looks like. I didn't grow up with it. And I'll be honest, because like my family doesn't listen to this podcast, so it's fine. I was a little disappointed by their reactions to me telling them that I was getting married, because they just were not like, they were more like, oh, good for you. But it wasn't like ecstatic, jumping up and down, super excited for me, like the kind of response you want when telling your family you're getting married. It was very like blasé of it. Like it was like I told them that, I don't know, I got promoted or something. Like, it's good, but it's not like the most exciting thing in the world.
Oh my God, that's exactly. Have you ever watched Gilmore Girls?
From time to time, yeah.
Yeah, the episode where Lorelai tells her parents that she and Max Medina are engaged in the second season.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that reminds me of, because like there's more history there. Like her parents found out beforehand and were hurt that they weren't told first. And so her response is like, well, I hope your father and I can make it. And then she says later, it's like, why did you treat that announcement like it was a promotion at the bank or something?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was telling his parents, I was like, I didn't really expect myself to get married in the sense. Like, I felt like maybe it would happen, but I never really was with someone that I thought, like, yeah, let's get married, until I met Ryan. And so this is definitely new territory for me in terms of, like, what does marriage mean to me in the context of, like, I have a shitty experience with it.
Yeah.
So how can I make it my own? How can I make it something exciting and something worthwhile? So I think that we're getting into a good rhythm with that, and like it's very exciting.
Yeah, this can be a topic to explore more fully when we have more than 8 minutes left. But that's like, it is an interesting idea that for the most part there aren't, like, thinking in my particular life, there are not a ton of healthy marriage examples I've seen set, and I love my parents, but I include them in that, like, respect, is that like they've sort of settled into a way in which they reduce the damage their idiosyncrasies do on each other. And they have evolved a little bit, to give them credit, but like something they've mentioned too, which I thought is interesting, is like as they see all of the parents of kids that we went to school with at St. Catherine's, like they say like 70% of them are divorced at this point, because like they also didn't have a good like marriage basis. And this is another like gripe I have with Catholicism in general, is because the clergy are, for whatever reason, banned from marrying. They're like, your religious leaders in that religion have no frame of reference for a good marriage. So it's like, how can you like tell me
right?
In fact, that's a line in Pride and Prejudice I always thought was interesting, is when Mr. Collins is trying to propose to Elizabeth, and he's like, it is the duty of the minister to set the correct example in all things, including marriage. And the first time I read that, like having priests who are theoretically virgins telling you everything about sex and marriage and love, I'm like, yes, that makes sense. Why is that not the example in our religion?
We actually just watched Pride and Prejudice for the first time, Ryan and I together, and
which version, if you don't mind me asking?
The one with Keira Knightley.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so I was actually, I haven't read the book, and so we were watching it, and we like looked at each other halfway through. I'm like, do we understand what's happening in this movie?
If you don't understand in the movie, you're never going to understand in the book. Like,
fair enough. Well, I mean, we got caught, like, I pretty much understood it, but Ryan was pretty lost. But I didn't feel like the movie did a great job of, like, showing the love that Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy were beginning to have for each other.
It does. So the Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadyen is an excellent movie in a very scaled down way because they only had like an hour and 45 minutes there. If you're looking for the deep dive, I'm sure this has already been recommended to you, but the BBC Jennifer Eel and Colin, this is the movie that Colin Firth made him a star, miniseries-wise, is so spectacular. It's a lot funnier than the Keira Knightley one is kind of devoid of humor, which Pride and Prejudice has a lot of very funny things involved in it, like Elizabeth's mother and father are kind of ridiculous. Her kitty is particularly ridiculous.
Well, and I mean, Elizabeth has some pretty sick burns, which I was able to pick up on a couple of them. But like you said, the humor was kind of lost out of those moments.
Even like Mr. Collins is a little bit bubbling. Like I like the Mr. Collins in that version a lot, but the guy who does it in the BBC version is so fantastic. And so there's another scene. One scene in particular I always think about with the difference between those versions is where Elizabeth is playing the harpsichord and it's like I was not being falsely modest. I really do not play well. In the BBC version, this is a very, very funny scene, as it really would be, I think, in real life. But in the Keira Knightley version, it's pretty serious and it's like a big humiliation for her for no particular reason. So, and it's interesting to see that you can do two things tonally different with. Yeah. In fact, did you know Pride and Prejudice and all of Jane Austen's works are in the public domain?
Oh, really?
Which is why Pride and Prejudice and Zombies exists. And Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters and so on and so forth. But
that's cool.
If you and I wanted to, we could make our own version of Pride and Prejudice.
That would be really cool.
As well as
do like a spoof.
As well as Dracula. Not even a spoof. We could just do the thing.
No, that's true.
Trying to think of other things that are in the public domain. We can do Winnie the Pooh as long as he doesn't wear a shirt.
Well, I guess that's true.
That's like the distinction is that the shirt version.
The red shirt, yeah.
Red shirt means that Winnie the Pooh is Disney. No red shirt means he's the A.A. Milne.
Right. Well, that's cool. We got a pretty decent dive into Pride and Prejudice in what, like 3 minutes?
Yeah, all because of marriage. I could talk about Pride and Prejudice for hours. We could do a whole podcast on it.
See, but now I have to watch the BBC one before we can have that conversation because and I haven't read the book, so.
The book, I've read it twice. I read it when I was in high school, and then I read it when I was 23, and it didn't speak to me the same way when I was 23 because I've read better books since then. Yeah. And for somebody writing in the early part of the 1800s, Jane Austen is very good, but it is a bit dated in my opinion. And I'm going to get some hate mail for saying that, but the foundations of the stories that she had were so good. People keep making them over and over, which is really. Writing style is not like the huge end all be all. It's really the story and the interactions. But anyway, we have about 2 minutes. What's coming up in Shannon World this year?
Yeah, so
this year.
This year. So October 21st, I'll be doing Sarah Cartwright's Comedy Monster Mash. So she's putting together some shows that will be in our costumes and telling jokes as the characters that we are dressing up as.
Woohoo! That's an awesome idea.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I am on the lineup for Link, so hoping to come up with some pretty cool Legend of Zelda content for you guys. Yeah, so I'm pretty pumped about that. Yeah. That, I think, is the only show I have coming up as of right now. And then I know Vid Jam of Horror is coming up, so I'm sure we'll be doing something for that. Yeah,
Vid Jam of Horror, because it's fresh in my mind, because I just did the promo. It's September 27th at 7 p.m. is when it starts, and everything has to be submitted by October 8th by 7 p.m. It's 11 days. I've already spoken to some people about getting our concept underway, because even though we don't have story, just to let everybody know that getting the infrastructure in place for the kind of movie you might want to make is perfectly permissible. Yeah. In fact, in our case, it's plumb necessary. Yeah. But I'm also so the Improv Theater is starting its season of shows this week again. Oh, finally, which I took mostly last season off. I was part of a improv group, but I also missed most of the shows for it. So I was basically absent. And I have 3 shows. Real Fast Coast Wives, which is with me and Wallace, is our improvised reality show. And that is going to be the first Friday of every month. Nice. I'm actually looking at it right now. So it's going to be this Friday, September 1st, at 8 p.m. Then on the third Friday, I'm in something called the Bonfire Society,
Cool.
which is a cosmic convergence team about like it's basically two different scenes that keep escalating to the point where with the same people, they converge with each other.
Cool.
And then my personal favorite, last Friday of the month at 9:30 to 10 is the Offbeats, which is Wallace and my musical group that we do.
Nice.
So
That's exciting.
Yeah, well, we need to shake off a lot of rust, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to just getting back to doing improv in a fun way. So
Yeah, I'm trying to, with the wedding coming up, I won't be doing much. But after the wedding, looking to get back into comedy and the other things. So we'll
Me
see.
too. I've been trying to get back into stand-up, but thankfully, like some of the things I'm doing to improve my health-wise have been giving me more energy.
Good.
So, and that's really kind of the crux of it is like making it out to stand-up after a day of working from 12 to 8 is like, do I have the energy for this?
Right.
And usually the answer has been no, but I really want to get back to doing it on the regular. So.
Yeah. Some
All
good
right.
stuff coming up.
Yeah, so thank you all for listening to us on a rare episode of Hal and Shannon Have No Guests.
Yay!
Yay, which I'm glad we did. And we'll have
Yeah.
great guests coming up in the next month because
Yeah.
Sam Melville will be back on, Ben Chadwell will be on. I've asked Karen if she wants to be on, and she's
Yay.
really excited for that. And
That'd be
and also we have to get Lennon on this podcast at some point. Like we had him for a while, and then you had to cancel one day, and we just never got him back. So
Yeah, but we will.
all right. Well, anyway, have a great week, everybody, and we'll see y'all next week.